The sun was bright and hot above the endless desert. Heat waves rose from the dunes, making the horizon shimmer. Myra stood at the edge of a half-buried stone structure, her hands resting on her knees as she caught her breath. Behind her, the rest of her team worked under the blazing light, using shovels and brushes to clear away sand that had hidden the ruin for centuries. This place was older than any city, older than any kingdom. The local people called it the Tomb of the Silent Sleepers. They said it had been closed for 3,000 years. No one dared to open it. The desert tribes told stories about strange shadows that appeared when the sun went down, about voices that whispered in dreams. Most people stayed far away from this place, but Mira was not most people. She was an archaeologist who had traveled across the world to study the history of ancient civilizations. She had always believed that the truth was more interesting than the legends. Her dark hair was tied back under a scarf, and her eyes searched every detail of the stonework in front of her. The carvings on the walls were worn by time, but they were still clear enough to show strange patterns, curved lines that looked like rivers, stars, and shapes that did not belong to this world. Ravi, a friend and fellow researcher, stepped up beside her. His shirt was soaked with sweat, and grains of sand clung to his face. "We have almost cleared the main entrance," he said. "Only a few more stones, and we can see what's inside." Myra nodded. "Work carefully. If this tomb really is as old as they say, we don't want to damage anything." The team worked for hours. The sun moved across the sky, and the air seemed to grow heavier. Even the wind that usually swept through the desert had slowed to a faint breeze. A pair of local guides stood farther away, watching with uneasy eyes. They had been hired to help carry supplies and to guide the team through the dunes, but they had made it clear they would not go inside the tomb. Finally, the last stone blocking the entrance was removed. The opening was a dark mouth in the earth, leading into blackness. Mira stepped closer, peering into the shadow. A cool breath of air came from inside, smelling faintly of dust and something she could not name. Then it happened. The desert went silent. It was not just the sound of the wind, because there was no wind now. It was the absence of every sound. No shifting sand, no distant bird calls, no whisper of air. Even the sound of her own breathing felt muted, as if the air around her was swallowing it. Ravi looked around with wide eyes. "Do you hear that?" he asked, but his voice sounded strange, as though it came from far away. Myra's skin prickled. She could see her team shifting uncomfortably. The guides muttered something under their breath and began to back away, their faces pale. "What is it?" Mira called after them. One of the guides turned, his expression tight with fear. "The Silent Sleepers," he said. "You have woken them." Before Myra could ask what he meant, the two men turned and walked quickly toward their camels, leaving the camp. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach, but her curiosity was stronger than her fear. She looked at the entrance again. The darkness inside seemed deeper now, like a pool of black water waiting for someone to step in. Myra's instincts told her that this was no ordinary tomb. Ben, the youngest member of the team, broke the silence. "We should go in. That's why we're here, isn't it?" Myra studied his face. He was trying to sound confident, but she could see the tension in his jaw. Still, she nodded. "We go in. But stay together. No one goes ahead alone." They lit their headlamps, and the beams cut through the darkness just enough to show the first few steps leading down. The stone was smooth, warm by time, and covered with faint carvings. The air grew cooler as they descended. Mira could feel the weight of the earth pressing in around them, but she also felt something else, like a low vibration that wasn't sound, a presence that seemed to touch the edges of her mind. The passage opened into a wide corridor. The walls were lined with more carvings, these ones clearer than those outside. They showed figures, humans standing beside tall, thin beings with long arms and eyes like circles of gold. Mira stopped to study them, tracing the shapes with her fingertips. "These are not gods," she said softly. "They look like people, but not human." Ravi leaned in. "Look at this," he said, pointing to one panel where the tall figures seemed to be giving something, a star-shaped object, to the humans. Ben frowned. "What does it mean?" Myra didn't answer. She didn't know yet, but she felt a strange excitement building inside her. The silence was still there, heavy and unnatural. It was the kind of silence that made her heartbeat sound loud in her ears. She realized that not only could they not hear the outside world, they couldn't even hear their own footsteps clearly. It was like the tomb itself was swallowing all sound. At the far end of the corridor, a faint light glimmered. It was not from their lamps. It was something soft and golden, coming from a chamber ahead. Myra's chest tightened. The guides had been afraid for a reason, and she was starting to understand why. But fear was not enough to stop her. She motioned for the team to follow Dot. As they moved forward, the air grew even colder. The golden glow grew brighter, and Mira could see the outline of a massive stone door ahead. The door was carved with more of the golden-eyed figures, but these were standing in a circle, as if guarding something behind them. She felt the presence again stronger now, pressing into her thoughts like a whisper she could almost understand. They had opened the tomb. They had stepped into a place untouched for 3,000 years. And whatever was waiting beyond that stone door had felt them arrive. The silence was no longer just the absence of sound. It was alive. The heavy stone doors had opened just enough for a person to pass through. Myra stood at the entrance and looked inside. A dark tunnel stretched forward, swallowing the light of the sun. The air was still, without the faintest movement. She could hear her own breathing louder than she had ever noticed before. Behind her, the desert lay silent. No wind, no rustle of sand, no cry of a bird. Ravi came up beside her holding a small light. His face showed both excitement and worry. He shone the beam into the tunnel. The walls were carved with shapes and figures, but the carvings seemed strange. They were not like the simple designs found in old human tombs. These figures were tall and thin, with long arms and eyes shaped like flames. Some carvings showed them standing over humans, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Ben followed, carrying a heavy pack of tools. His boots crunched softly on the sand, though the sound felt muffled here. Alia brought the recording device, but when she tried to check it, the screen flickered and then went black. "It is not working," she said softly, as if speaking louder might disturb something in the air. Mira tested her own communicator. There was no signal. The desert outside had no towers nearby, but this was more than distance. It felt as if sound itself had trouble moving in this place. They stepped inside. The tunnel was narrow at first, but widened after a short walk. The walls rose high above their heads. The carvings grew more complex. Some showed strange objects in the sky that looked like ships, not ships of water, but of the air, or perhaps the stars. Others showed a great darkness spreading across the land. With the tall being standing in its path, the air inside the tomb felt heavy. It was not hot or cold, but pressing, as if it carried weight. Each breath was easy yet strange, as if it carried a taste of metal. Their footsteps were the only sound, and even that sound seemed to fade quickly, swallowed by the silence. After a while, they reached a chamber lit only by their lights. The chamber had 4 pillars, each carved with scenes of the tall beings giving gifts to human shining stones, long spears, and what looked like seeds glowing in the carvings. The ceiling was covered in painted stars, though the paint had faded with age. Ravi knelt to study the floor. He found lines cut into the stone, forming a circle in the middle of the chamber. The circle was broken only in one place, where another tunnel led deeper into the tomb. It feels like the place is guiding us somewhere, Ben said. Myra felt the same. The carvings, the layout, even the strange circle, they all seemed to lead the visitor forward, deeper inside. She looked back toward the entrance, but the light from outside was already a faint glow far away. They followed the second tunnel. It sloped downward slowly. The air grew cooler, though still heavy. Strange markings appeared on the walls, not pictures but symbols. None of them could read the symbols, but they seemed organized, almost like warnings or instructions. At one point, Alia stopped and touched the wall. Her eyes widened. "This stone is warm," she whispered. Myra touched it too. The stone was indeed warm, though no heat source was nearby. The warmth felt steady, not like sunlight or fire, but like the quiet heartbeat of something alive. The tunnel opened into a larger hall. At the far end stood two massive statues facing each other. They were carved with such detail that Myra almost believed they might step down from their stands. The eyes of the statues were set with golden stones that caught and reflected the light from their lamps. Between the statues stood another door, much larger than the entrance they had come through. It was perfectly smooth, with no handles or hinges. The surface was covered with faint lines, like veins in stone. Ben approached one of the statues and studied it closely. He reached out to touch its hand. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the statue's head moved slightly, turning toward him. Its golden eyes seemed to flash with light. Ben jumped back, his breath caught in his throat. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice trembling. They all had. Myra felt the heavy air tremble for a second, as if the silence itself had been disturbed. Then the ground under their feet gave a soft vibration. The great door began to move. It slid slowly to the side, without sound, revealing a spiral staircase, descending into darkness. A strange hum filled the air, not a sound, but a feeling in their bones. Ravi looked at Myra. "Did we go down?" he asked. Myra took a deep breath. "We came this far," she said. One by one, they stepped onto the staircase. The stone steps were worn smooth with age. The deeper they went, the more the air felt alive, as if the tomb itself was aware of their presence. The walls here had no carvings, only the smooth, warm stone that seemed to pulse faintly with hidden life. At the bottom of the stairs, the passage opened into another hall. This one was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow. Along both sides stood long stone structures, shaped like boxes with carved lids. Each one was marked with symbols and lined with a faint, soft glow that came from inside the stone. Myra realized what they were: sarcophagi. But they were unlike any she had seen before. They seemed too perfect, untouched by time, as if they had been placed here yesterday, rather than 3,000 years ago. The silence was deeper here, so deep it felt like the air had stopped moving altogether. No one spoke. Their light swept over the endless row of stone boxes, each identical, each waiting. Myra had the strange feeling that they were not the ones exploring. Instead, they were being watched. The golden light grew stronger as Myra and her team stepped forward. The cold air wrapped around them, but the deeper they went, the more the silence seemed to settle into their bones. It was not just the absence of sound anymore. It was like the tomb itself was watching them. The corridor ended at a wide archway. Beyond it lay a huge circular chamber. The walls curved high above their heads, disappearing into shadow. The floor was smooth stone, covered in faint lines that formed a pattern too large to understand from where they stood. At the very center stood a massive round door. It was unlike anything they had seen in the rest of the tomb. The door was black, stone with veins of gold running through it, and it was flanked by two towering statues. The statues were strange. They were not weathered like the carvings outside. Every detail from the folds of their robes to the shape of their hands was sharp and perfect, as if they had been made yesterday. Their faces were long and thin, their chins narrow, and their eyes seemed alive. Even in the dim golden glow, the eyes reflected light like polished metal. Ben stepped closer, his footsteps slow, his lamp beam trembling slightly. "They look too real," he whispered. Alia stayed back, her arms crossed tightly. "I don't like this. These aren't statues. Not the way we think of statues." Mira circled them slowly, keeping her distance but studying every angle. The golden eyes seemed to follow her as she moved. She told herself it was just a trick of the light, but the feeling in her chest said otherwise. Ravi bent down near the base of the left statue. "There's writing here," he said. He brushed away a thin layer of dust to reveal a row of small symbols carved into the stone. They weren't like the carvings outside. These were sharper, cleaner, almost glowing faintly. "I don't recognize the language," Ravi added. Myra knelt beside him, her fingers tracing the marks without touching them. "Neither do I," she said. "But they don't look like decorations. They look like warnings." Before she could say more, Ben reached up and touched the hand of the right statue dot. It happened so fast that no one had time to stop him. The statue's head moved. Not much, just enough to turn slightly toward Ben. But it was enough for everyone to see that the golden eyes inside were not stone at all. For the briefest moment, they shone with a light that came from deep within. Ben stumbled back, almost tripping over his own feet. "It moved," he said, his voice shaking. The chamber itself seemed to respond. A low vibration spread through the floor, up their legs, into their chests. The golden veins in the black door began to glow faintly, like fire crawling under the surface of stone. Myra's lamp flickered, then steadied. She could feel her heart pounding hard. She glanced at the second statue. Its eyes now glowed as well, and they seemed to be looking directly at her dot without warning. The massive central door began to shift. It did not swing open. It did not slide sideways. Instead, the surface itself split down the middle, each half turning slowly in opposite directions like giant gears. Dust drifted down from above as the grinding sound of stone echoed not in their ears, but deep inside their bones. A narrow gap appeared between the two halves of the door, and from that gap came a faint golden light much brighter than before. The air grew even colder, but also heavier, as if whatever was behind the door carried weight that was not just physical. Ben looked at Myra. "We shouldn't be here," he said. "Something doesn't want us here." Myra didn't answer. She was staring at the opening. She knew that he was right, but she also knew that this was why they had come. The door continued to turn, the golden glow spilling into the chamber. The pattern on the floor began to shine as well, the thin lines now lit from within. It was only then that Mira realized the lines formed a spiral leading toward the door. Ravi whispered, "It's like the whole room is waking up." When the gap was wide enough, a cold draft swept out, carrying with it a scent unlike anything Myra had ever smelled. It was not decay, not earth, not dust. It was sharper, cleaner like air from a high mountain peak. The statues did not move again, but their eyes stayed bright, watching as the opening revealed a spiral staircase made of black and gold stone. The steps curved downward into darkness. For a long moment, no one moved. The silence pressed against them harder than ever, as though urging them to either step forward or leave forever. Finally, Mira spoke, her voice calm but firm. "This is our path. Whatever is down there has been waiting for 3,000 years. Alia shook her head. "And what if it was meant to stay hidden for 3,000 more? Myra didn't answer. She took a step toward the staircase. Her lamp beam disappeared into the black below, swallowed by the depth. Ravi hesitated, then followed her. Ben cursed under his breath but came next. his fear no match for his curiosity. The moment they set foot on the first step, the golden light in the chamber dimmed slightly, as if the room itself had exhaled. The statues returned to their stillness, their eyes slowly fading until they were just polished stone again. The spiral staircase was narrow, the steps warm but unbroken. The deeper they went, the colder the air became, and the pressure in their ears made it feel like they were diving into deep water. Myra kept one hand on the wall as they descended. The stone felt warm under her fingers, pulsing faintly like the skin of a living creature. After what felt like hours, they reached another archway. Beyond it was a long hall lined on both sides with stone shapes that Mira's brain first thought were large boxes, but then she saw the carvings and details. They were sarcophagi, dozens of them. Each one was carved with the same tall, thin figures, their golden eyes inlaid with some unknown metal. And in the center of the hall stood a sarcophagus larger than all the rest, resting on a raised platform. The glow in the air was stronger here, coming from faint lines on the floor and walls. Mira's breath caught in her throat. They had gone too far to turn back now. Something in the deepest part of her mind whispered that the chamber of eyes above had not been meant to scare them away. It had been meant to watch them and judge whether they were worthy to come this far. The hall was so quiet that even breathing felt loud. The glow from the floor made the stone shine faintly under their feet. The air was heavy and cold, yet there was a strange freshness to it, as if it had been sealed for thousands of years. Myra stepped slowly toward the large sarcophagus in the center. It stood on a wide platform, higher than her shoulders. The carvings on it were deeper and sharper than the ones on the others, showing the tall, golden-eyed beings in full detail. There, long hands rested on what looked like strange tools or weapons, and their faces were calm, almost peaceful. Ravi walked beside her, scanning the walls. "There must be more here," he said softly. "This place feels like more than a tomb." Alia kept to the back, her eyes moving over the dozens of smaller sarcophagi lining the hall. "More like a barracks," she murmured. "An army asleep." Ben was already climbing the steps toward the large central sarcophagus. "Let's see if we can open this thing." "Ben, wait." Myra started, but he was already running his hands along the edges, searching for a seam. The moment his palm brushed the top surface, a faint pulse of golden light ran across the carvings. The air trembled. The light from the floor grew brighter, the lines now spreading to the walls and racing toward the smaller sarcophagi. Myra felt the vibration in her bones. "Step back," she said firmly, pulling Ben away from the platform. The carvings on the central sarcophagus began to shift. They didn't crack or break. They moved like pieces sliding apart. The top of the stone slowly lifted, though no one touched it. A hiss of cold air escaped. Curling in pale mist. Inside lay a figure unlike anything they had ever seen. It was tall, far taller than a human, with skin the color of pale silver. Its armor was dark and covered in faint lines of gold that pulsed like a heartbeat. The face was sharp and smooth, its eyes closed, but even in stillness it carried a presence that filled the hall. Aaliyah whispered, "It's not dead." Before anyone could answer, the figure's chest rose slowly, as if drawing in its first breath in thousands of years. The sound of it, soft but deep, seemed to echo inside their minds rather than their ears. The figure's eyes opened. They were gold, brighter than the carvings, glowing with a light that felt alive. Myra froze under its gaze, unable to look away. It was not the stare of something waking confused. It was the stare of something that remembered everything. The light from the floor surged toward the smaller sarcophagi. One by one, the lids began to slide aside, revealing more of the golden-eyed beings. Some were clad in the same dark armor, others in long flowing robes. Each of them opened their eyes in perfect silence, Ben stepped back until his shoulders hit the wall. This is not possible. The tall figure in the center rose from its resting place with slow, deliberate movements. Its armor made no sound as it stepped down from the platform. Its gaze swept over Myra, Ravi, Alia, and Ben in turn. A voice entered Myra's mind. It was not speech, it was thought. Yet it carried a weight that made her knees feel weak. "You are not the ones we expected." Myra swallowed hard, forcing herself to stand straight. "Who are you?" she asked aloud, though she wasn't sure if sound mattered here. The figure tilted its head slightly, as though studying her. "We are the Star Wardens, protectors of this world. We slept until the signal came, but the signal did not come." Ravi's eyes darted to the other wardens now stepping down from their own sarcophagi. "If the signal didn't come," he said, "why are you awake?" The warden's golden gaze fixed on him. "Something has disturbed the seal, something not of our making. Tell us, how many years since the fall of the Great Gates?" Myra hesitated, not understanding the term, but said, 3,000 years, maybe more." The warden was silent for a long moment. Then another voice, this one from a warden in robes, spoke directly into their minds. "Too soon. The hunger still moves in the dark." Alia stepped forward despite her fear. "What is the hunger?" The robed warden's eyes flickered brighter. "It is the shadow between stars. It consumes. It leaves nothing alive. We fought it once, and the cost was too great. We sealed ourselves here to wait for the time when the threat returned." Myra's heartbeat quickened. "So you're saying it's coming back?" The warden in armor, the leader, nodded slowly. "If we are awake, it is because the hunger has already begun its approach." The silence in the hall deepened, though now it felt like it was filled with meaning. The humans looked at each other, and in that glance, Myra understood. This was no longer just an archaeological discovery. This was a warning. One of the smaller wardens moved toward them, its steps smooth and precise. It carried a long, thin device in its hands, made of black and gold metal. The glow from its edges seemed to hum faintly. The warden held it out to Myra. "You will need this," it said. Myra took the device carefully. It was lighter than it looked, warm to the touch, and the moment her fingers closed around it, she felt a faint pulse through her palm, like the beat of a heart. Ben stared at the growing number of wardens now awake. "How many of you are there?" The leader turned its gaze toward the rows of open sarcophagi. "Enough to fight. If your kind stands with us." Ravi frowned. "And if we don't?" The leader's eyes burned brighter. "Then your kind will fall, as others have fallen. And the hunger will not stop here." Myra tightened her grip on the device. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She had come here seeking the past, but what she had found was a battle for the future. The wardens began moving toward the far end of the hall, where a wide archway led deeper underground. The leader stopped and looked back at them. "Come," it said. "There's much you must see before the sky changes." Myra glanced at her team. She saw the fear in their faces, but also the same spark she felt inside: curiosity and the unwillingness to walk away from something this big. She nodded once and stepped forward, following the golden-eye beings into the darkness beyond. And behind them, in the Hall of Stone, the last of the sarcophagi opened. The army of the silent sleepers was awake. The new passage beyond the hall sloped downward. The walls were smoother here, made of a dark stone that caught the golden glow from the warden's eyes. The air was cooler, fresher, and carried a faint metallic scent. Myra walked close to the leader warden, the one in dark armor. She still did not know its name, but she could feel its presence like a steady flame beside her. Behind them, Ravi, Ben, and Alia followed, their eyes darting between the strange devices in the wardens. hands in the shadows ahead. After a long descent, the passage opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling rose high above, lost in shadow, but the floor was covered in a perfect circle of golden lines. At the center stood a pillar of black crystal, taller than any person. Light pulsed inside it, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of something ancient. The leader warden stopped before the crystal and turned toward the humans. "This is the memory core," it said in their minds. "It holds the story of what was and what will be." Without speaking aloud, the leader reached out and touched the crystal. The glow inside brightened, and a wave of light swept outward across the chamber. The humans gasped as the air itself seemed to change. Suddenly, the stone walls were gone. Above them stretched a vast sky filled with stars so clear and close they seemed within reach. Worlds hung like jewels in the dark, and rivers of light curved between them. It was beautiful, endless, and overwhelming. "This is not real," Ben whispered. Though his voice sounded far away in the strange vision. In his memory, the leader's voice echoed in their minds. 3,000 years ago, your world was one. Among many, we, the Star Wardens, were guardians of the paths between worlds. We stood watch against the hunger. As it spoke, the vision shifted. The stars dimmed, and from the darkness came a shape. At first, it looked like a shadow, but it grew and spread, blotting out entire clusters of stars. It moved without form, but wherever it passed, the light of suns went out. "The hunger," the leader said. "It devours not for survival, but because nothing else remains when it is gone. It is the end of all things." The humans watched as the vision showed great fleets of ships racing to meet the shadow. The ships were unlike anything on Earth, sleek, long, glowing with energy. At their head were larger vessels shaped like silver blades, each one commanded by a warden. The fleets attacked, beams of light striking into the darkness. But the shadow absorbed the light and kept moving. One by one, the ships vanished into the void. "We fought it for centuries," the leader continued, "but it cannot be destroyed, only delayed. We sacrificed worlds to slow its advance, and when it reached the edge of this system, we made our choice." The vision shifted again. Now Myra saw Earth, not as it was now, but green and unscarred, its cities glowing faintly under starlight. Around it floated great structures like shining rings. The warden ships moved in and out of them, carrying people, supplies, and strange devices. "We sealed the great gates and placed our knowledge in the hearts of your early kin," the leader said. "We hid ourselves in the deep earth, to wake only." When the hunger came again, the stars and the vision began to fade, replaced by the familiar darkness of the tomb walls. The glow of the crystal dimmed, and the silence returned. Mira felt a weight in her chest. "If you went to sleep to wait for the hunger, and you're awake now, then the shadow moves again," the leader finished for her. Ravi stepped forward. "But it's been 3,000 years. How far away is it?" The leader's golden eyes narrowed slightly. "Far enough that your skies still seem safe. Close enough that your skies will not be safe for long." Aliyah shook her head slowly. "And? You expect us to fight this? We have nothing like your ships or weapons." "You have something greater," a robed warden said, stepping closer. "You are not the same as the ones we knew. We remember a people who obeyed without question. You do not kneel. You think, you adapt. You change faster than the hunger expects." Mira understood the meaning. The wardens had strength and knowledge, but humans had unpredictability. Together, they might stand a chance. The leader turned back to the crystal. "There is a ship hidden beneath the sand, the last of our great vessels in this world. We will wake it, but we cannot do so without your help." Ben frowned. "What could we possibly do that you can't?" The leader's gaze locked on him. The seal on the vessel was made so that only the will of this world's people could break it. We swore not to rule your kind. That choice is yours. Myra looked at Ravi and Alia. She could see in their eyes the same thought she had. This was bigger than any discovery, bigger than any danger they had faced. They could walk away and pretend it wasn't real. Or they could step forward and be part of something that would decide the fate of their world. The leader warden reached into the folds of its armor and drew out a small object. It was a disc of black metal, no larger than a human palm, marked with the same star-shaped symbol they had seen in the carvings above. It handed the disc to Mira. Place this on the seal when we reach the vessel. Your choice will awaken it. Myra took the disc. It felt warm, alive, as if it was aware of her touch. She slid it into her pocket, the weight of it pulling at more than just her clothes. The wardens began to move toward another passage on the far side of the chamber. The leader glanced back once. We move now. The sands above are already changing. Myra followed, her mind racing with everything she had seen and heard. The memory of the stars burned in her thoughts. The beauty, the war, the shadow that devoured all. One thing was clear. Whatever waited for them outside, the silence in the desert, was only the first sign. And soon the whole world would hear it. The passage upward was long and twisting. Mira could feel the air grow warmer as they climbed, the weight of the earth slowly lifting from above them. The wardens moved with silent precision, their golden eyes glowing faintly in the dim corridors. When they finally reached the outer tunnel, the air felt different. It was still dry and hot, like the desert always was, but there was a strange taste to it, sharp and metallic. The leader warden was the first to step out into the open. Myra followed, and her boots sank into the warm sand. The sun was low, dipping toward the horizon. Shadows stretched long across the dunes. At first, nothing seemed unusual. But then Myra noticed the silence was still there, thick and heavy. Even outside, no wind moved the sand. The air stood still. Ravi shaded his eyes and looked toward the sky. "What is that?" he asked quietly. Myra followed his gaze. Above the far horizon, the blue of the sky looked darker than it should at this hour. A faint shimmer, like heat haze, rippled across that darkness. It was not a cloud. It did not move with the air. The leader warden spoke in their minds. "The hunger moves. We are closer to its edge than I thought." Alia stepped back, her hands curling into fists. "It's here already?" "Not here," the leader said, "but near enough for the signs to touch your world." The silence, the still air, the dimming of light, these are its shadow. The wardens began moving quickly across the sand, their long strides carrying them faster than the humans could easily match. Mira and her team kept pace as best they could. "Where is this ship?" Ben called out between breaths. "Beneath the dunes," the leader answered, "hidden in the bones of an ancient sea. It is guarded by seals your kind must break." They traveled for over an hour. The sun slipped lower, and the strange darkness on the horizon grew wider. The light around them seemed duller, as if some invisible veil was falling over the world. When they reached the crest of a tall dune, Mira saw it, a wide depression in the sand, like the remains of a lake long gone. At its center stood a ring of stone pillars, each one tilted with age but still standing. Faint lines of gold ran through them, catching the dying light of the sun. The wardens spread out, forming a circle around the pillars. The leader motioned for Mira to step forward. "The seal waits at the heart," it said. "Bring the disc." Myra pulled the black metal disc from her pocket. The moment it was in her hand, she felt it grow warmer. The golden veins on the pillars brightened in response. She walked into the circle, her boots sinking in the soft sand. In the exact center was a flat stone half buried in the dune. Its surface was carved with the same star-shaped symbol as the disc. Myra knelt and placed the disc onto the carving, The sand trembled. From beneath, a deep pulse rolled upward through the ground. The gold in the pillars flared, connecting in thin beams of light that crisscrossed the circle. The air above shimmered, and a faint hum began not in their ears. But inside their bones, the leader warden stepped forward, raising its arms. The beings from the pillars joined together at the center, and the sand around the stone began to sink, swirling downward in a slow spiral as the sand fell away. A shape emerged, a curved surface of black metal, smooth and unmarked by time. It was huge, stretching far beyond the circle of pillars. Ben's mouth dropped open. "That's a ship." The hum grew louder. The black metal shimmered, and lines of gold spread across its surface like veins awakening. The wardens stood motionless, their eyes glowing brighter than ever. But before the process could finish, the air changed again. The sky above them darkened sharply. The shimmer on the horizon had grown larger, swallowing the light. Stars appeared. Too early, flickering strangely as if something enormous moved between them and the world. Ravi pointed upward. "Look!" Shapes were moving in the sky. Not ships, not birds. Just shadows, vast and slow, sliding across the stars. The darkness seemed to pulse, and with each pulse, the stillness in the air deepened. The leader warden's voice came hard and fast in their minds. "The Hunger Scouts have reached your skies. They sense the awakening. We must leave now." The gold lines on the ship flared fully, and the ground shuddered. The black metal began to rise, lifting from beneath the sand as if it weighed nothing. The circle of pillars blazed with light, and a deep opening formed at the ship's side, revealing a ramp that extended toward them. The wardens moved quickly, ushering Mira and her team toward the ramp. Ben hesitated, staring at the shadows in the sky. "Are those alive?" "Do not look at them," a robed warden said sharply. "Their gaze marks you." Myra grabbed Ben's arm and pulled him toward the ship. The air around them grew colder, and for the first time since entering the tomb, she felt the faintest breath of wind. Only it was not from the desert. It was from above, as if the sky itself was leaning down toward them. They reached the ramp and hurried inside. The interior of the ship was vast, the walls smooth and curved, the floors dark metal streaked with gold. Light came from no visible source, casting everything in a soft glow. The ramp closed behind them with a deep, echoing sound. The hum in the air turned into a steady vibration under their feet. The leader warden stood at the front of the group. "This vessel is the Soul Crown, last of our ships in this world. With it, we may meet the hunger before it touches your soil." Myra stepped closer, her voice steady despite the fear tightening her chest. "And if we fail?" The leader's golden eyes met hers. "Then your world will join the others that are silent forever." The ship began to rise. Through a narrow viewing strip along the wall, Mira saw the desert falling away below them, the circle of pillars shrinking to dots in the sand. The darkness on the horizon seemed to move faster now, stretching across the sky like a living tide. Somewhere, deep inside, Mira knew the quiet days were over. The desert silence had been the first warning. The war for the world was about to begin. The Soul Crown rose higher and higher above the dunes. Its silent engines carried it smoothly into the thinning air. Mira stood near the viewing strip, watching the desert fade into a pattern of gold and shadow far below. Her heart was steady. Now, the fear was still there, but it had turned into something harder determination. The wardens moved with calm precision inside the ship. They did not speak with voices, but Myra could feel their thoughts brushing against hers, like a distant echo of words. The scouts grow near, the leader warden told them. "When we break through the upper sky, they will see us." Ben stood beside Mira, his eyes locked on the growing darkness above. It was no longer just a haze on the horizon. It was a wall vast and shifting, stretched across the edge of space. Shapes moved within it, their outlines bending the light of the stars. Ravi checked the straps on his gear. If those are scouts, what do the real ones look like? The leader warden's golden eyes flashed. The true hunger does not take shape. It is the silence between stars. These are only fragments of it, fragments strong enough to erase a world. The ship broke free of the last thin clouds and entered the blackness above. The earth curved below them, glowing faintly under the fading light. Ahead, the darkness thickened. The scouts were waiting. Without warning, 3 shapes detached themselves from the wall of shadow and began to move toward the Soul Crown. They glided without wings or engines, their forms twisting as if they were made of smoke and metal at once. The wardens moved to their stations. Thin golden strands of light rose from the floor, forming control patterns in the air. Myra and her team had no idea how to fly a ship like this, but the wardens had told them they would be needed for something else. "You will carry the voice of defiance," the leader warden said. "The hunger listens before it strikes. If it hears no resistance, it will not stop." Myra frowned. "You mean it can hear us?" "It hears the will of those who fight," the leader said. "That will is a weapon. Without it, our light will break too soon." First scout reached them. It passed close to the ship, and for a moment the light inside dimmed. A cold weight pressed into their minds. Mira felt it try to reach her thoughts, to pull them down into quiet. She forced her mind to focus on the warmth of the desert sun, on the sound of her friends' voices, on the idea of the earth still alive tomorrow. The weight faded, and she breathed again. The second scout came from above, spinning in slow arcs. The ship's golden vanes flared, and a beam of light shot upward. It struck the shadow shape, tearing away parts of its twisting form. But instead of falling apart, the shadow simply reshaped itself, darker than before. Ben gripped the railing. "These things don't die easy." The leader warden's voice came again. "They do not die at all. They only fade when the will against them is greater than their pull." The third scout rushed in from below, aiming for the ship's hull. Mira and Ravi ran to a side station where golden symbols glowed faintly. A warden showed them how to touch the patterns, sending waves of energy out into the space around them. Myra felt something strange happen. The ship's hum matched the beating of her heart. The patterns of light followed her thoughts, shaping into bursts of force that struck the scout head on. It slowed, twisting violently, then broke apart into smaller shadows that scattered into the dark. The first scout returned, and the Soul Crown turned sharply. Lines of light spread from its hull, forming a shield that glowed against the blackness. The shadow slammed into it and was thrown back, its form rippling like water hit by a stone. For a moment, the space ahead cleared. Mira could see beyond the scouts into the deep wall of shadow. There was no end to it. It spread across the stars like a tide coming to drown the sky. The leader warden's golden eyes turned toward her. "This is where your voice is needed." Myra stepped forward. She did not know how to speak to something that was not alive, something that was more hunger than mind. But she closed her eyes and thought of the earth, the wind across the desert, the green of forests, the rush of rivers, the laughter of people under open skies. Her thoughts formed words, not in her mouth but in her mind. "You will not have this world. We are still here. We will fight until there is nothing left to fight with. We will not kneel." The air inside the ship seemed to thicken. The scouts hesitated, their twisting slowed. The wall of shadow pulsed, as if something deeper inside had heard her. The leader warden's voice was quiet now. "It listens." The scout struck again, harder than before. The Soul Crown shook under the impact, but its golden veins blazed brighter, fed by the will that now filled the ship. Mira's words were not alone. She felt Ben, Ravi, Aliyah, and even the silent wardens adding their own thoughts to the same message. The light spread outward from the ship in a wide wave. When it touched the scouts, they twisted violently and began to break apart, their forms dissolving into thin streams that drifted away into the void. But the wall of shadow still remained. The leader warden raised both arms. We go now into its edge. If we can hold the light within its dark, it will fall back from this world. The ship moved forward, straight into the heart of the shadow. The darkness swallowed the stars. The cold pressed in, and Mira felt it try to silence her again. But now she knew the answer. She thought of every sunrise she had seen, every voice she had heard, every step she had taken on the living earth. And she kept thinking, louder and louder, until a light from the ship became a blazing sun in the middle of the dark. The wall began to tear. The blackness peeled away in long streaks, fading into nothing. The cold lifted dot, and then they were through. Behind them, the shadow was shrinking, pulling away from the planet. The scouts were gone. The stars shone clear again. Inside the ship, the wardens stood in silence. Then the leader turned to Mira. You have given your world more time. That is all any battle can win. But in the end, it may be enough. The soul crown turned back toward the earth. Below them, the planet lay in peace once more, though the memory of the dark would never be forgotten. Myra stood with her friends, watching the blue and green grow larger beneath them. She did not know if the hunger would return tomorrow or 1,000 years from now. But she knew one thing for certain: humans would be ready. Humans would not kneel.